Now, Pauline, we know that there's plenty of coal-fired power stations which are being turned off, blown up. Best part of 30% of New South Wales' energy is about to do that in the next couple of years. But the Energy Minister, Blackout Bowen, well, he says, trust me, it's all okay, despite the fact that the amount of energy we're currently producing is not being matched by the new technology. Magically, we will be able to continue to service an electricity grid that will need more electricity because of things like the electrification of kitchens, stoves and cars. Roll the tape.
Certainly, AEMO has advised to me very clearly and all my state and territory colleagues that the closure of Liddell can be absorbed into the system without any disruption or threats because of all the dispatchable renewables that have come on in recent times.
Nothing says working class to me, Pauline, like a high-vis vest that's just come out of the shop from Lowe's, but that's the side issue. Apparently, magically, you can reduce the amount of energy being created, but suddenly it won't matter.
Well, Paul, isn't it funny that they say they want to change it to renewables, but since they've been on the renewable bandwagon, the cost of electricity for our households and industries and manufacturing has actually doubled, tripled the price. Also, a lot of our industries and manufacturing are going overseas. For 1% of emissions that we're putting out in Australia, we're actually destroying our economy and the way of life and standard of living for many of Australians. So this has been a scam that's put to people that, you know, we've got to protect the environment. Well, if you still want to trade with a country like China, whose emissions are 30% compared to our 1%, well, then you're the fools here because we're destroying our economy while we're pushing this agenda. They're doing it because the kids in the educational system have been brainwashed with this climate change. There's no critical thinking, there's no two sides of the argument. Then they come out of school, then they actually think, oh, the Greens are the ones trying to save the environment, so we'll vote Green until they grow up, and then when they get in their 35, 40, then they start to wake up what the Greens really stand for. Greens are dangerous. I see their policies on the floor of Parliament. They are dangerous and they are going to get control of it. I don't see the Teals as a threat. I think the Teals will fade out. And it was shown in the last state election in New South Wales that they didn't win the seats. So I don't think the Teals, Greens are the real threat and their policies. And I warn people, you are going to pay a price in this country and you're going to really feel the cost of living and the standards in Australia if you keep voting Greens, because understand what you're voting for.
Well, but also this scenario where right now, I'm just having a look. National energy market, 72% of the energy in New South Wales the past 48 hours has come from coal. 2% from gas, 5% from hydro, 11% from solar, 11% from wind. Yet, in the next couple of years, we're going to blow out the best part of 30% of the grid, but it won't be being replaced with an alternative source of 30% the day that happens. But Corey, how is it that we get the people responsible for the grid telling us that the three-wheel car works just as well as the four-wheel car, and the minister responsible for this telling us that even if it is a three-wheel car, it can still win Bathurst?
Because you could get an expert for anything, for any opinion, and they always pay the people that, or repeat the song of the people that pay them. And this is the tragedy of government and this bureaucratic class today, Paul. No one trusts them anymore. No one can believe them because no matter what they've promised and whatever they've put forward, it's proved to be false, it's proved to be empty rhetoric, it's proved to be just buying time. And what happens? You look at the pandemic, if we go through there, what the experts told us was out and out lies again and again and again. They all got Australia Day awards for it. I mean, you know, by goodness, no one's been held to account for it. What are we going to do going forward when our manufacturing can't exist, whatever we've got left of it, where we've got blackouts and people can't afford energy bills like they've got in England? What are we going to do? Say, thanks, Chris Bowen? It's not your fault? It's not your fault, AEMO? We are destroying this country, thanks to the lies and the dishonesty of those in charge.
I'm with you. Joe, help me out. I mean, again, I understand why industry, government, all the rest of it wants to go from the old car to the new car. I get it. But if it doesn't have all four wheels, like the current amount of renewables has, how can you take one wheel off the car like Liddell and Eraring in the next 2 years.
Well, these are just one or two generators. They are not the entire coal supply.
30% of one state, though.
Is coal, not from these generators. There has been a big uptick in the amount of renewable stuff that's been built. Obviously, the future is going to lie in the ability to store the power to this generator. The reason why we saw spikes in coal and gas, in part, was last year, was in part because there were more overcast and windless days than the people thought. So they hadn't bought the coal and gas at cheaper forward contracts, and they suddenly had to buy it when they needed to top it up, buy it at the spot price. That was an unusual circumstance. But yes, there is obviously a massive challenge in making sure that we can store the power. And yes, there is going to be capital investment, which has a high upfront cost, and that's including wind, solar, and indeed nuclear, which has a very high upfront cost. But I think that should all be part of the mix. I think gas needs to be used as a transitional fuel source. But again, let's just wait and see. If AEMO, which is an independent agency, an independent regulator, says that, no, this is not going to happen, we've crunched the numbers, the only people who are saying it might be a problem, I think, is a sort of coalition of really high energy users. And even they're saying, look, it'll probably be fine, but we're worried that, in a worst case scenario, there could be shortages or blackouts. But if AEMO's saying, no, there won't be, and that's pretty equivocal.
Weren't they telling you, last year or earlier? Hang on, weren't they telling you to turn your air conditioners off in Sydney and all of that during the summer? This is when you had coal-fired power stations. Joe, I like you, mate. Your logic here and rationale is wrong.
Let's not run around being chicken littles. If they say there will be no blackouts and then there are blackouts, bring out the brick bats.
We are going to be realistic. We've got to be realistic, mate. But you cannot just vomit
let's
up
be realistic about what is actually happening.
All right,
let's not just darken our trousers about what might happen, some nightmare apocalyptic scenario.
No, but our lived experience was